Chapter 16. Sierra groaned as her alarm projected its shrill tone throughout the small apartment and pulled the pillow over her head. She wanted nothing more than to sleep just a little longer, but she had set her alarm for 9, only giving her an hour to get ready before Aoden would arrive to collect her, as he had worded it. Sierra's call with her mom had gone late into the night, but nothing had been resolved. Mrs. Lopez desperately wanted Sierra to fix her problems with her youngest son, but Sierra was done being the peacekeeper between them. It was time for her mom to figure it out on her own. Not to mention that Sierra was halfway around the world, and she didn't see what she could possibly do to rectify the situation. Sure, she could call Diego, but she also saw his side of things, and she wanted her mother to grow up and learn how to rekindle her relationship with her youngest son on her own. She wished that she had left the conversation in a better place, but it had ended with her mom hanging up on her. She figured now that it was only a matter of time until one of her other siblings called on her mom's behalf. They were probably drawing straws now, but Sierra figured it would be Antonio or Cecilia since Maria had called the last time. Sierra begrudgingly climbed out of bed, groaning as she flicked on the light and headed into her tiny bathroom to shower. As she stripped off the shorts and t-shirt she slept in, Sierra tried to avoid looking in the mirror. She loved how her face looked, but her skin always made her cringe, and after the events of the night before, she was feeling even more self-conscious than normal. She showered as quickly as possible, trying to leave enough time to dry her hair. It had been getting colder in Dublin as winter grew closer, and she didn't want her hair to freeze on the way over to Aoden's. Slipping on one of her few matching bra and panty sets, Sierra chanced a glance in the mirror, only to grimace. Brushing off her embarrassment at the sight of her skin, she slipped on an undershirt, sweater, and jeans over the cute matching set. Sierra wished she had a different body, one she wouldn't be embarrassed to see when she looked in the mirror. As she brushed out her hair and slipped in her silver hoop earrings, Sierra wondered what Aoden's place would look like. All she knew was that it was close to here, and that he apparently had servants who had done her dishes last night. She knew he was wealthy in his world, but she wasn't sure how that translated to this one. She had just finished braiding her hair in the mirror when Aoden's face peeked around the bathroom doorframe. Even though she was now aware of his talents, it still made her heart skip a beat with how quickly he appeared and disappeared.
Good morning.
He smiled as his eyes roamed over her outfit.
You look absolutely breathtaking.
Sierra blushed at the compliment. While she always received them in the U.S., it was different when the compliment came from someone you were romantically interested in.
Are you ready?
Aoden asked. Sierra nodded and left the bathroom, coming to stand in front of the door to her apartment with Aoden just a step behind her. Are we walking or...
Yes, we will walk. While I can shift myself and things, most Fae can't shift people. Only very powerful ones, and even then, not far, and only within the Fae realm.
Sierra slid her feet into her boots. Interesting.
Very. And since magic has been disappearing, I haven't heard of anyone who can shift people or Fae in a long time.
Sierra slid her arms into her jacket and her purse over her shoulder. Aoden took the lead and held the door open for them. Sierra locked it, and they headed down the stairs. So, tell me more about your place, Sierra asked once they were on the sidewalk, wanting to be prepared for what she was about to see.
Well, it is very hard for my people to find homes here, since we don't have personal public service numbers like other Irish residents do. We also frequently don't have bank accounts or credit histories, and very few landlords are willing to rent us without these human things.
Oh. Sierra hadn't thought of that, as she, even on a student visa, had been issued a public service number so she could get health care while she was here. She hadn't even considered how hard it would be to live here without one.
As a result, we almost always have to stay with other Fae that have relocated here with a human partner, or in a place owned by a Fae family for hundreds of years, before public service numbers were invented.
They turned the corner. Makes sense. So, who do you live with? Sierra looked up at Aoden, but his eyes remained straight ahead.
An old friend of my family, Bron. He came here about a decade ago to be with his human wife, Kay.
Sierra was quiet for a moment. But won't she, die long before him? Aiden glanced at her out of the corner of his eye before looking forward again.
There are many complications when a human and Fae fall in love. The main one is the aging. The second is that the human world can be tough for a Fae to reside in permanently. And many humans don't ever feel fully comfortable in the Fae realm, even if they live their whole lives there. But
He took a breath.
when you agree to date someone, there is no guarantee they will live the same amount of time as you will anyway. You could fall in love with a human your exact age and they could die tomorrow. Time is never promised. And it's not worth not enjoying the person you love because there's a risk that they might die before you.
Sierra had never thought of it that way, but Aiden was right. Aiden cleared his throat.
As for Kay and Bron was over 60% through his lifespan when he met her. While she will still likely precede him in death, it may only be by a few decades.
Sierra was so wrapped up in her thoughts that she hadn't noticed that they had come to a stop in front of a large house, something which was uncommon in the Dublin city centre. It was built of brown bricks and looked to be at least a few 100 years old. Vines climbed up the side of the house, and empty flower boxes lined the windowsills of the white-framed windows. The curtains in all the windows were closed, ensuring that no one on the street would be able to see what was going on inside.
Are you ready to go in?
Aiden turned to face her. Sierra looked from the house to Aiden. Almost. I wanted to ask one more thing. Aiden's eyes bore into hers, and Sierra took that as permission to do so. Is there any way for a woman to become Fae, or vice versa? Aiden froze. Sierra could tell he knew the answer, but instead of opening his mouth, his eyes searched her face, clearly scavenging for a way to avoid answering the question. You promised not to lie to me, Sierra reminded him. Aiden let out a breath.
I've heard rumors that humans can become Fae, but it's very complicated and rare.
What do you mean?
For a human to become Fae, they must petition to Mother Nature, also called Gaia, that they are needed for a purpose and that being human would impede that purpose. Mother Nature has the final say, and she may or may not make the change. If it is discovered you asked for selfish reasons, she could also leave you with a curse.
Do you know anyone who has been changed?
No.
But you just ask?
Sierra, I really don't want to discuss this right now.
Sierra bit her lip. Aiden's angry tone wasn't one she had ever heard him use before, not even when they had been arguing. Okay, let's go inside then, she replied as she took a telltale step back, putting a buffer of space between them. She expected Aoden to reach past her to twist the doorknob, but to her surprise, the door floated open on its own as they said the word, inside. She raised her brow at Aoden, but he just laughed.
Oh, you'll get used to it.
Aoden stepped in first, and Sierra followed. They were barely in the door when it drifted shut behind them. Before she could ask about anything else, two forms filled the hallway in front of them. One was a man who was clearly Fae by the look of his pointed ears. His hair was a similar sandy brown tone to Aoden's, and he had a similar height and build. Sierra hadn't asked, but now she was wondering if they were somehow related. The hallway was wide with tall ceilings, but the man was imposing enough that it almost felt crowded to Sierra. The house had clearly been built in a previous century, as Sierra noticed the wooden floor creaking as she shifted her weight. Her eyes were also drawn to the opulent chandeliers, of which there were at least 3, though the hallways continued around the corner and out of sight, so she couldn't be sure. Directly to her right was a staircase with a bright blue runner covering the centermost part of the steps. But Sierra found that, despite all of the obvious opulence, her eyes kept returning to the woman who stood next to the man. She had fiery red hair, which fell in waves around her distinctly human ears. She was taller than Sierra and very beautiful, even in her comfortable-looking oversized sweater and leggings. She looked to be in her early 30s. Sierra figured this must be Kay. Both of her suspicions were confirmed when Aoden stepped forward and introduced them.
Sierra, this is my cousin Bron and his wife Kay.
Well, that answered her question about the family resemblance.
And this is Sierra.
He told Bron and Kay. Sierra stuck her hand out, but to her surprise, Kay enveloped her in a hug, and when she was done, Bron followed suit and did the same.
Welcome to our home. Aoden has told us so much about you.
Bron said with a warm smile. Sierra looked at Aoden, whom she had only really been on good speaking terms with for a day or two. That's concerning. Everyone burst out laughing, which made Sierra smile, but she truly wondered what he could have possibly told them, since they weren't even officially dating just yet. Nothing bad, we promise. Kay took her hand. Come and sit. We have prepared tea. She practically pulled Sierra into an old-fashioned sitting room. She wasn't familiar with interior decorating trends, but if she had to guess, no one had ordered new furniture in at least a century. The room was lined with bookcases on every wall and a fireplace at one end. There was one window, but it was covered by the heavy blue drapes she had observed when they were standing outside. A lamp sat in the corner, providing most of the light in the room. The center was occupied by several Victorian-style chairs and couches around a coffee table, which held a tea set and several plates of sweets and cakes. Kay released Sierra's hand by the couch, which Sierra took as a sign for her to sit. Aoden sat next to her while Kay and Bron made themselves comfortable on two of the chairs on the other side of the coffee table. Aoden slid off his beanie, revealing his ears, which he clearly didn't need to keep hidden here. So, Sierra, Aoden mentioned you work at the library together. Kay picked up the old-fashioned teapot and began filling the dainty teacups with hot water. That is true, Sierra replied. And you're studying at the university? Kay finished filling the cups and passed around a wooden box filled with tea bags. Sierra chose a clove tea. Yes, aging and fragility.
That's an interesting course of study.
Bron replied as he chose his own tea bag and a second one which he placed in Kay's cup. It is. I'm very interested in medical sciences. Sierra picked up her cup, blowing the steam from the top as the tea steeped. Have you thought about becoming a doctor? Kay asked. Sierra winced. Although this topic frequently came up, she still didn't like discussing the reasons why she wasn't becoming a doctor. I studied pre-med already, however. I am much more interested in the science behind medicine rather than treating people for illnesses. Sierra scoped out the treats on the table, careful to avoid eye contact.
Help yourself.
Bron encouraged. Sierra reached for a brownie, setting it on the plate next to her teacup. So, you're Aoden's cousin. It sounded dumb, but Aoden hadn't exactly prepared her properly for this type of social event, and Sierra felt uncomfortable and desperately wanted to get the attention off her.
That's correct.
Bron answered.
Our fathers were brothers.
Sierra noticed the word choice. Were?
Yes, I'm sure Aoden has told you, but it's a very hard life for the Fae to have more than one child. When Aoden's father was born, I was already well into the middle of his life. He passed to the next life some time ago.
I'm sorry to hear that, she replied sympathetically, wondering what Faye believed the next life to be, but feeling it was an inappropriate time to ask.
Don't worry about it. It was over 100 years ago.
Sierra nearly choked on her first sip of tea at Bron's statement. I forget that time is different for you, she explained, blushing at her faux pas. Kay shrugged, fixing her hazel eyes on her husband. You get used to it. Sometimes I am very envious, as I feel we humans aren't given the same time to properly heal from mental traumas and the trauma of loss as we would get if we lived longer. I understand. Sierra surveyed the table again, hoping they wouldn't judge her for taking more than one treat as she hadn't had anything to eat yet today. Not to give you false hope, but there are many advances in the study of aging and why humans age. So maybe by the time you have to worry, human science will have solved some of the major causes and effects of aging. Kay smiled, showing off her beautifully straight teeth. I sure hope so. She looked between Sierra and Aoden, an emotion Sierra couldn't read dancing in her eyes. So, how did you meet Aoden here? He wouldn't tell us. Sierra laughed. Believe it or not, Tinder. Kay and Braun both laughed. Us too, but it was over 10 years ago, before Tinder was as widespread as it is now. Sierra took a bite of her brownie, smiling as the delicious chocolatey taste filled her mouth. She chewed slowly. Oh my, this is delicious. Braun smiled.
That's because we mostly cook with fey ingredients.
Sierra must have looked confused because he continued.
We work as traders between the fey and human worlds. Though many fey have come to work and live here, they still miss products from home, so we make trips home to keep them stocked.
Sierra's eyes widened, realizing she hadn't yet asked Aoden how one got from the fey world to the human world. How often do you go back?
Not too often. Sometimes when I know someone is coming this way, I have them bring stuff with them.
And you can't just shift the items? It was Aoden who replied.
As I mentioned before, while all fey have shifting abilities, they aren't what they used to be. Plus, shifting between our home realm and here doesn't work.
Why not? Sierra was still trying to get her mind around this shifting thing.
We aren't sure,
Braun replied.
but we think it's because we can only shift things that share the same plane. Most Fae believe the realms are stacked, and therefore have different planes. Even bringing stuff back and forth is tedious, as only what can be carried can be brought at one time. Usually we have a vehicle on one side of the barrier, and go back and forth a few times to fill it with everything we plan to bring.
Sierra saw her chance. The barrier?
The barrier, or the door between our worlds, is located up north by Kilkenny, which is why I said I was from there when we first met. It's not a visible barrier, but if you know where to look, you can see the place where the earth twists. Well, at least we Fae can see it. I guess I never asked a human.
His eyes drifted to Kay. She nodded enthusiastically. I can see it as well. She looked to Sierra, who was taking bites of something she assumed was a scone. Many humans have stumbled into she over the years out of curiosity when they see the way the air glimmers differently. Sierra was having a difficult time picturing this portal and wished it was closer so she could see for herself. Sierra looked at Aoden, and he must have been reading her emotions because he stood from the couch and announced,
I'm going to take Sierra on a tour of the house now.
Oh yes, of course, go ahead. We will catch up to you later. Kay and Braun looked at each other, something unspoken passing between them as Sierra rushed to swallow the large bite of food she had just taken and brushed the crumbs from her lap onto her nearly empty plate. Before Sierra could say anything else or take a last sip of her tea, both Kay and Braun stood and left the room. Sierra looked over to see Aoden had also stood and was holding out his hand to her.
Are you ready?